Hello and welcome to the Huddle Breakdown preview edition as we look ahead to Celtic's Champions League clash against RB Leipzig at Celtic Park. A huge game for Celtic tonight, and hopefully they'll get a win on the board in this Champions League group as they look to go into the second half of this group stage with more than the 1 point that they've got on the board so far. Alan Morrison and Juco James are on the line as always as we look ahead to this game. Alan, we'll start with, I guess, the most important aspect of this game, and that's the starting lineup. We don't have it just yet. It's always hard to preview games without the team sheet in front of you and make a good judgment call on it. But I suppose we'll start by looking back at the weekend rather than looking ahead to what we think might be the team sheet. We'll look back at the team sheet that was up against St. Johnstone at the weekend. A good few changes to the team. Ralston came in at right back, Burnaby came in at left back, Carter Vickers was back for it with Stephen Welsh, and the centre back Hatate and O'Reilly made up a double pivot in midfield, which was quite interesting. We were wondering what Ant would do with the changes now that Cal McGregor is out injured. Jota, Haksabanovic, and Abada, and then Giakoumakis started up front. So my instinct tells me it's not going to be exactly that starting 11, given the changes that were required from a physical standpoint and I suppose a tired leg standpoint. But I guess we'll go with the midfield. We'll start with that because that's the most interesting aspect of this. If you ask any fan, and we question what Celtic would do without Cal McGregor now that he's been confirmed out injured probably until the World Cup and beyond. So a good few games he's going to miss. It was a double pivot of Rio Hatate and Matt O'Reilly playing in a deeper role in midfield. What did you make of that first off?
Yeah, I think it was mixed, it's fair to say. So, I mean, with O'Reilly, you're always going to get moments of quality. And, he did thread a number of passes through. But what you don't realise, you miss it until you don't have it right. So what McGregor gives you is, he's ostensibly a number 6, but that doesn't mean to say he's hammering into people, winning tackles, flying around, intercepting the ball, giving it off easy and letting the other players kind of play, just being that sort of insurance policy. He's not that sort of number 6, right? His main attribute is that he gets the ball, he finds space in Celtic's own half, whether it be between the pressing strikers or between the pressing forward players. He manages to always receive the ball in a good body shape, good body position, and he does everything quickly. And so therefore he progresses the ball up the park, and he's capable also of running with the ball at feet very effectively. And that's his main skill. Now, I'm not reducing him down to just that, but he's not the most creative player anymore. He's frankly terrible at shooting, and as I say, he's never going to be a Scott Brown type of aggressive number 6. But that's not to kind of denigrate what he does, because all the things that he does are in the 75% of the actions that involve having the ball. So it's really important that he's good at what he does. So replacing that is difficult, right? I think personally you need somebody in that position who understands that position. Rather than Matt O'Reilly, who's a bright young player. We've had him playing as a number 8, a number 10, and now as a number 6. I don't think he always picked up the right positions. I don't think he always received the ball on the half turn. His body shape wasn't always perfect for that. And I just think against this caliber of opposition, there's just too much risk in expecting him to play the role that McGregor played last week, where McGregor was under incredible pressure, both from players running at him, etc., and every time he got the ball. So I think you need somebody in there who understands the role well. And I think you then get O'Reilly's benefit as one of the more forward players.
Yeah, absolutely. When you see Cal McGregor play on the international stage, like the Champions League, I think that's when you start to see his value, or more so when you don't see him in the Celtic team, you start to see the value that he brings. James, you were actually writing about Cal McGregor in the Celtic Way today, and one of the things you highlighted was OBV, which is a metric you like to bring in on the ball value, but more particularly from dribbling and carrying the ball, what McGregor brings in that aspect versus what Rio Hatate and Matt O'Reilly can bring. Now, just purely instinctively, I would look at Matt O'Reilly and say he's not as strong at carrying the ball forward as Cal McGregor is. I would see that as one of McGregor's great strengths, is being able to be the link man between the almost the second line of defense up to the midfield and the more attacking players. So in that aspect of play, what real life differences does it make?
Yeah, so what I wrote is I fear it's an intractable problem, meaning that, to Alan's point, McGregor's kind of a hybrid type of player that is maybe not ideally, but very well suited for what's required of the style of play that Ange is asking Celtic to play. And the slower you transition in build up from the back to the front, the easier it is. I mean, it sounds like common sense stuff, but it's all about the fine margins. But it's the easier it is for the defending side, the opposition, to get into shape and to be able to mark people and make it harder to break them down, because they're going to be an organized defense, obviously. And what McGregor excels at is being able to get that transition and build up done very quickly, very intelligently. He's quick of thought and of action. And that was always one of my bigger concerns with Brown, is because he, was intelligent in his play, but he wasn't necessarily quick in doing it all the time. And that was why we'd often would get kind of methodical in our buildup, and it seems almost slow at times. And I think we started to see more of that, and that's part of what I wrote about. Is it's only one game, to Alan's point. I mean, to put O'Reilly, none of this had anything to do. It was more so about building up the value of McGregor than being critical of anybody else, and how difficult this problem is going to be to address, I think, domestically, let alone going up against a team like Leipzig tonight. So I'm just not sure there's an answer to it. I think it's going to be, and Ange in his press conference yesterday, I mean, he claimed that it wasn't a double pivot, that it was kind of the same setup. And I think some of that was a natural issue of people having to drop to help and build up. And I suspect we'll see that again tonight, because I don't think our back five are going to all of a sudden magically, even with Carter Vickers back, hopefully, that we're magically going to become this, Real Madrid style build up from the back team. So, and that, that invites pressure, and then that moves the opposition up the field a little bit, and that could create some opportunities in transition for our side in attack. But it also creates risk. And I think that's the other part where McGregor, he's such an intelligent player, but he's also so schooled in doing this now. The muscle memory of where to go, who's going to be where. No one else is going to be able to do that at this stage. They do not have the reps. They do not have that muscle memory. And so it's either slow it down, or your error rate is going to go up. And I think that's, so it's pick your poison kind of thing. Do you need another player dropping back to help, or more than one? Do you slow down the buildup, or do you have the error rate go up because the people trying to fill this role? And I think all of those scenarios bode concerningly for the opposition tonight, specifically because of the way they play and the athleticism and the attacking threat that they pose.
Yeah, I think the point that you make there is quite interesting, in that Cal McGregor might actually be more difficult to replace domestically than on the European stage, because if you think about what we've spoken about, what we need in the European level is someone that's going to be cutting out the counterattacks that are going to happen inevitably by Celtic playing such a high line. But if you think about the replacements for Cal McGregor, it's James McCarthy, defensive destroyer; Abildgaard, defensive destroyer; Ideguchi, I haven't seen much of him at all since he's come to the club. But apart from that, we don't really have, Aaron Moy isn't really a Cal McGregor type either. He's more of a controller in the midfield, as opposed to a high energy, all round sort of central midfielder that Cal McGregor is. So against teams like St. Johnstone, when you don't have a player like Cal McGregor, you end up with a more defensive minded player playing in a role against a defensive team, and you sort of have you're playing too much of a defensive team for your own good. Celtic didn't do that at the weekend. Obviously, they dropped Matt O'Reilly back a little bit further. But in terms of the game tonight, Alan, Abildgaard was the one who came on for Cal McGregor when he got injured against Leipzig last week. He looked dead on his feet by the end of the game. He didn't look like he was fully up to, the system or the speed of play. Is he the player that's going to come in to replace him tonight, do you think? Or do you think it'll be James McCarthy? Because James McCarthy is somebody who has done quite well in the little cameos that he's been on the field over the last couple of days. You're on mute, Alan.
Sorry, everybody came home then. I need to have seen Abelgard or Abelgor or Abligor. Oh, Abelgor. I think is the correct
Abelgar.
Abelgar. What he's been like on the training ground. Because I mean, the guy. People need to understand that he hasn't played a competitive game since May. He didn't have a club to train with until he joined Celtic, so he was training on his own. Which, I'm sure he's fit, but there's fit, and then there's training with other big blokes who are kind of chasing you around and kicking you type fit, and he's not that fit. So he's going to take a bit of time. I mean, I like the look of him. I like the look of him before he joined. I like the fact that he protects the back four. Once again, we were exposed numerous times aerially. RB won't try and launch balls into the box, but they will try and get the ball forward quickly. And Abelgor seems very good at intercepting. Number of last ditch tackles and things he's put in the last two games. And the cameo appearances have been incredible actually for the short amount of time he's been on the pitch. If he could last 70 minutes, I would personally put him in because I don't think he's that conservative a passer. I think he's pretty decent on the ball as well, but it's possibly too early for him. And then in which case you're left with a choice of Moy or McCarthy. I don't think it'll be McCarthy. I just don't. He's just so far out. It's just a different style of football altogether. And it was funny what you said. We ended up arguably with 3 holding midfielders on the pitch at the end against St Johnstone and still gave up loads of chances. So what does that tell you? Maybe Postecoglou's right. Actually, you need more attackers on there to score more goals. So I suspect it will be O'Reilly. That's what I think he'll go with. But if it was me, I would like to go with Abelgard. I'd move O'Reilly forward with Hatate, and I don't suspect Jota will make it, and I'd have Haksabanovic on the wing, on the left wing to replace Jota. But otherwise it's Moy, and I just don't think Moy's got either the coverage defensively or the intensity of passing and the quickness to take advantage. Even though he's got the range, he's got a fantastic range of passing. I just think this game would be too quick for him, frankly.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Abelgar front. I thought he was quite good in the small moments that he was involved in the play last week. Even just that extra protection for the ball over the top of our rather small fullbacks, his extra couple of feet really does help when it comes to the long balls. So we'll wait and see. Hopefully when the starting lineups come out, we'll have more clarity on this. But you mentioned Jota there. It hasn't been confirmed that Jota will miss this game. Ange is being Ange and keeping his cards close to his chest. When it comes to the knock, he said that it was a bit of a knock, maybe a bit of a strain, and he was a bit too good looking as well. That was what Ange said when asked what was wrong with Jota and whether or not he'd be fully fit for this game. James, operating off the assumption that Jota is not available for this game, how does that change our approach, starting lineup, the way that we even structure the attack with, is it Kyogo or Giacomakis? If you take Jota out of him,
not a good subtraction.
No,
particularly if this could impact, I'm guessing anyway, the calculation that Ange goes through as far as deciding on the midfield setup, because if Jota's out, does that prioritize Haksabanovic out wide relative to playing him in midfield? This goes back to Alan's patented trademark toxic combinations, which is, if we're going to put Hacks, I'm just going to call him Hack, because if I try to say that more than once, it's going to be even more of a debacle.
Just call him Haxa, because
Haxa, okay. Yeah. So if they put Haxa in midfield, which, has not been his primary position, and he's played there some in the past, but not a lot. I just looked the last time that O'Reilly had any real stretch as a defensive midfielder was over 2 seasons ago, and it was a little bit back right at the beginning of his MK Dons tenure, and we're talking not a lot of minutes. It's kind of, and then at the end of his Fulham period, he played a little bit. So the idea that we're going to put these two guys in these two positions, and Jota's now missing on the wing, and is it going to be Maeda? Is it going to be Abada? As the two wingers, or does Forrest come in? None of these are ideal situations, and my concern would be if you start stacking some of these guys up on a basis where they're not, again, that muscle memory part of it, where because we're so pattern driven, and the way that guys are supposed to go in certain ways, and there's a way that we play, and if guys aren't in that specific role to the point where they have that kind of muscle memory, to me it increases the risks of errors. And again, with this opposition, every one of those misplaced passes, or guys 3 steps away from where they should be, we saw enough of that last week where as we joked, kind of the jailbreak syndrome, where they had 4 and 5 guys running at us where we were deficient in numbers. So I don't think there's a good answer here. It's a question of picking your poison and hoping that the way that you go might work out better, and that people have good games, and that the support in the crowd really helps, and people don't have as many misplaced passes, and all the talk about being confident on the ball and all that type of stuff. And hopefully you just have one of those games where a lot of this comes off. And I'm just concerned you put more people out of the positions that they're really comfortable with. I mean, maybe you put Maeda back on the left because he's probably more comfortable on the left. That kind of thing, because the more people you play out of position, the more I get really anxious.
Yeah, the forward line is going to be really interesting, because I think the entire structure of the team has to be reworked. I definitely don't envy Postecoglou in the build-up for this game because of the key injuries that have happened. And one player that hasn't had the best couple of games, I can't find the exact stat that I saw today, Alan, was Dyson Maeda. I think it was something like he had 0 successful dribbles in the last 3 to 4 games, and 1 shot or something like that. It's been a pretty dire run of form for him. It's not the ideal situation for Celtic going into this game, being out of form and having key players out injured. But I guess if we're looking, without seeing the team sheet, if we're looking at the structure of the team, how does the injury to Cal McGregor, the positioning of Matt O'Reilly, and the forward line, how does that impact how we play in comparison to, for example, how we played last week and how we played in the Champions League already this year, with Matt O'Reilly playing as a second striker in the 4-4-2 out of position or out of possession formation that we've been playing? How do you think that's going to impact? Is somebody else going to do his role, or how do you think we're going to set up in that aspect?
So 2 different answers, unfortunately. One is what I think Postecoglou will do, and one is what I would do. But then, I'm probably a little bit more conservative than he is in that regard. And listen, I'm hoping he gets the win that his principles deserve tonight. I suspect what he's going to do to cover that off is go what we went last the weekend, which means that either Abada or Maeda or both of them will be dusted down and sent back out. Both players, to me, are not in great form. Maeda is so off form. It's just I actually feel sorry for him. It's just he's in a really bad place as far as his form is concerned. The end of the game against St Johnstone, where he dribbled back half the length of the field and then just really didn't know what to do with the ball, so just gave it to one of their players in our box. It was just like he felt so sorry for him. The guy's just so out of touch. It's incredible. Nothing. I mean, he even got in the way of Matt O'Reilly's free kick and deflected it wide. He's just having a horrible time of it. I think he'll play him. I think Haksabanovic, had a really good game as a 10, and I think we're going to go really, really aggressive. That's what I think we'll do. If it was me, actually, I would put Abelgard in. I would move. I'd have Hatate and Riley in their normal positions. I would have Haksabanovic on the left, where he's perfectly comfortable, and that's his normal position. And this is going to seem really weird, but I would actually put Forrest on the right tonight, because I just don't think either Abada or Maeda are in good form. I think Forrest looked sharper than I expected when he in his minutes and his experience, and he cannot substitute experience at this level. You really cannot get enough of it. Abelgard has only got 52 minutes in the Champions League, which was last week, or less than 38 minutes, whatever it was. Carter Vickers has come back. Carter Vickers looked, his timing was off. You get the fouls he was giving away, the one that led to the goal. It's because his timing's not there, because he's just not. And it's like the whole team is misfiring at the moment. It's like it needs taking to the garage and tuned up somehow. So to me, that's why I would add a bit of stability. I'd add a bit of solidity in terms of defensive cover with Abelgard, and I'd experience and nous and knowledge of the Champions League and in Forest. And you've still got a very attacking side there, and it can still play to the principles we want to play to. But I just think Abada and Maeda, great to bring them on later in the game, and because as we've seen, we need to make subs, and probably a bit earlier than we do. So they'll definitely play a significant part of the night. But I just want to see us get back to being solid. And when I say solid, I don't mean defensively rigid. I mean consistent in our play, because that's what's lacking for me. It's not that I'm saying we should go more defensive or we should be tighter. I'm just saying we should be more consistent in our play. We're very ragged at the moment in what we're doing. We're not executing well at all, or even consistently. In the game on Saturday, after the 19th minute in the first half, we didn't have a single shot at goal to half time, not a single one. There was a moment of nearly 10 minutes where we didn't complete a single pack pass. We didn't have a single aggressive forward pass for around 10 minutes. I mean, that's if we don't score in our moments when we are on top and we do go at the other team, we seem to kind of have a bit of a crisis of confidence at the moment. I don't know if it's a crisis of confidence, I don't know what you call it, but there's something just not quite right, and it might just be the injuries and there might be a little bit of doubt in the players because they've come up against the Champions League teams and they've got a bloody nose, and it's like, okay, we now need to kind of adjust, etc. But whatever it is, I would just add a little bit more, as I say, solidity. I don't mean being defensive. I just mean being players that are probably going to play consistently is what I mean.
There's loads of comments coming in on the YouTube channel, and do keep them coming. We'll try to get to some of them before we finish up. One that I do want to focus on immediately is Richie, who says that Abada is a coward. He's 21 years old and has scored 4 goals in 2 games against Rangers, so I don't think he is that. So I just wanted to address that one before we move on with the actual show. James, it's been a week. I've almost forgotten how painful it was watching RB Leipzig tear us to shreds at times during the game. But one of the things that Celtic did in the game, and Ange said it in the press conference afterwards, was sort of pedestrian passing or safe passing, not brave passing. Players getting the ball, passing it back to the goalkeeper, and eventually it led to what he said was Hart's mistake. So he was kind of taking the pressure off, or the blame off Hart. He said it was down to too many calm or not brave passing from Celtic. If you were to look at what Celtic did last time out and what they need to do this time out, what would be the number one priority for you?
So I think it's and I guess I'm more of a believer in chaos than Ange, maybe, meaning that some of this stuff is just kind of randomness, and what we need is a game where we're more aggressive with the forward passing and we have more than our fair share of them going well. And when they don't go well, more than our fair share of the bounces going our way. And we had some bounces go our way early in the first half last week, and we just couldn't quite finish them in the box. They had a lot of people generally in front of our people with possession, so it wasn't like we had clear shots at goal. But I think we're going to need some of that, because, and this goes back to the selection, and Alan's concept of toxic combination. So if you were to have just a hypothetical, like if you were to have a front three of Maeda, Abada, and Giakoumakis, none of those three are particularly good on the ball and retaining possession and keeping possession. And then you had a midfield of Haxa, Hatate, and O'Reilly, two of which are very aggressive with their passing, but also that can mean you turn the ball over. I mean, Hatate in particular does that at a fairly high rate. And when it comes off, it's beautiful, and he makes brilliant passes at times. But every time it doesn't, again, turns into these transition opportunities. And because of the combination of our back five and their attacking threat and athleticism, so this is why I'm open to the idea. Normally I probably wouldn't be, but I'm open to the idea of a Forrest, because he tends to be more secure on the ball. And putting Hacks on the left, because he tends to be a little bit more secure on the ball, for example. And going with the lineup that Alan mentioned. So, I think it's just having some combination of players that are not going to turn the ball over a lot, and having the dial turn to the point where we get more of the benefit of the attacking passing, whether that's from deep, the ball progression quickly, or in the final third, because we're going to have those opportunities. I mean, I think we know that now from watching Red Bull Leipzig, is that they're kind of in the same neighborhood we are. I mean, that they're going to weight the attacking side of it and playing direct, and that's going to create transition opportunities for us. It's just when we do get those, we need it to kind of work out in our favor, more so than not. And I think some of that, a good chunk of that's just going to be kind of luck. So hopefully the ball bounces in our way. As we talked about in preparation for last week's game, it's, Leipzig are chaos merchants. And we just need some of that chaos in our favor.
Commenting from Christy, he says, please let this be the game where we finally take our chances. Scoreboard pressure, nothing like it. Matt O'Reilly was speaking in the press conference ahead of this game, and he said something similar. He said that, I think we know what we need to do to win the games now. It's just that ruthlessness in front of goal and being really clinical in those final moments. And it is something that Celtic have been doing in these games, is creating a lot of chances, but not really taking them, and not taking them at crucial points, you would say, Alan. I just want to take us back to the 2-1 game in 2018. Celtic starting lineup for that was Craig Gordon in goals, Lustig, Boyata, Benkovic, and Tierney in the back four, Cal McGregor and Ryan Christie in the double pivot, James Forrest, Tom Rodgick, and Scott Sinclair, and Odsonne Edouard up front. Granted, if you look at that team, you've got Kieran Tierney, who was world class at that point, and Odsonne Edouard, who was absolutely unstoppable in that game. But there's not too many players in that team, Alan, that you would say would easily get into the starting lineup in Celtic's current setup. There are a couple, but there are a couple that would have to fight for their place. If you're talking about two simple things that Celtic need to do, is number one is take belief in that this Leipzig side are beatable at home, and number two is take their chances. So which of them is more simple?
Yeah, that's a pretty strong team, but it's a very attacking team actually as well that Celtic put out that night. So listen, I mean, I'll sort of frighten everybody, and then I'll try and kind of focus on what might the positives be. But last week, I just look at how they played last week. I thought they were excellent. I really do. I mean, they're not perfect, and they're not, one of the elite teams in Europe. Okay, and we'll come to that. But if you think that, in terms of, we talk about packing data, so. And I know the packing score is a little bit abstract, but think of the packing score as accumulation of rewarding forward passes that you complete and forward passes that you receive. And all of those things add up to your packing score. And then if you force a turnover, you might get some more points. And if you lose the ball in turnover, you might lose some. So but essentially, it's the sum of all those things. And we had, Celtic had one player who had over 100 packing score. That was Juranovic, who had exactly 100. Now, Juranovic had pretty much the run of the right side off the park in the first half, especially because Werner just didn't track back. So he will be hugely important tonight if Werner plays on the left of their sort of four up front. And Taylor was on 99, was just behind. They had 7 players that had an over 100 packing score. Okay, so what that means is, in simple layperson's terms, is that they found it incredibly easy to play through us. Okay, and they found it very easy to bypass our players going forward, and especially Gvardiol, Raum both ways in terms of he was getting on the ball quite aggressively going forward. Andre Silva was popping up absolutely everywhere, causing chaos. Szoboszlai the same. We were able to find holes all over the place. So huge danger there. Now, in terms of and we saw that in terms of the quality of the attackers, Werner, German international, Andre Silva, Portuguese international, and Kunku is going to go for a lot of money. French international, Szoboszlai, Hungary's great sort of young hope. There's a huge amount of talent there. That if you give them that amount of space, we're going to get badly hurt again. But there's so many things that we can do better. We can't possibly be as open as we were in terms of our team shape, in terms of the gap, the spacing between the lines, in terms of how disorganized we were about our pressing, and in terms of how deep the defense was relative to the rest of the team. We have to get those things right to restrict the space that they've got. We need to push up and be very, very brave and hope that the VAR and the lines people do their job as far as offsides are concerned. In terms of what gives us hope, well, we did make chances, we did create chances, and we will against this team. They do essentially attack with 6 players. They leave the 2 holding midfielders and the 2 centre backs pretty much to hold the fort. That means there's huge amounts of space on transition out wide. We've got good fullbacks that can attack that space. We've got a bit of pace in the wide areas. So we need to in transition again be smart about playing out and playing into those gaps. And as I say, they're not a top elite European team. We can create chances against them. We created, by my metrics, about 1.5 xG, but we gave up nearly 3. So we've got to get that balance right. I mean, I'll leave you with one. There's one last sort of non-data driven point, which is I believe this is a game for which they are under far more pressure than we are. Okay, this is a club that is geared for Champions League football. The owners expect Champions League football. The investment expects Champions League football. And although they aren't going to necessarily beat Bayern Munich every year in the Bundesliga, the expectation is they're up there challenging in the top 4 of the Bundesliga for that title, and certainly to cement one of those Champions League places. They're currently languishing in mid-table. They know if they lose this game, then pretty much Celtic need to beat Shakhtar Donetsk in their final home game, and RB Leipzig are probably out of the Champions League. And with their position in the Bundesliga, that could pretty much kill their season dead. Okay, because it's going to be a really low key season for them. Can they kind of move from mid-table up? So I think they're under enormous pressure to do well in this game, much more so than we are. Celtic, I know we all want to get out of the Champions League group, but we're the 4th pot team. We're a team that's lacking experience. We'd all love to get out there, but would it be season defining if we didn't qualify for the last 16 of the Champions League? Would we look back on whatever happens next and say, well, yeah, we won the league and we won the cup, but we didn't get to the last 16 of the Champions League. The season's a disaster. We wouldn't. I think it would be disappointing if we didn't make it into 3rd place, but I don't think it would be a disaster if we. I'm sure the players and the manager don't have that attitude. I'm just trying to look at it dispassionately, and as I say, my point is, I do think they're under enormous pressure tonight. So. You can't sort of force a team to score first, but if we can at least get a lead, get the confidence up, get the momentum going, get the crowd going, then this is a team that we can get at. But we have to be tighter and more compact out of possession. We have to be better organised about our press, and we have to take our chances, which is easier said than done. But you're not going to get anything at this level if you don't.
Yeah. Just one final point on the sort of tactical side of things and how Celtic are going to set up. I'm not sure. Did you watch the Arsenal Liverpool game at the weekend by any chance? So just broad strokes. Arteta comes from the same line of coaching as Ange does, the City group. He is a fan of the inverted fullbacks, just like Pep Guardiola is. That's why he brought Zinchenko to the club. At the weekend against Liverpool, he changed his entire structure of the defence by bringing Tomiyasu in at left back and instead of Kieran Tierney. And what that did was he didn't play his inverted fullbacks. He played normal bog standard fullbacks, and that was to deal with the 2 Liverpool fullbacks who push up in a similar fashion to what the RB Leipzig fullbacks do. Is that something that we could look at for this game, where Celtic can actually maybe change things up again a little bit going forward, that Juranovic and Greg Taylor don't invert that, or do you think we need them in midfield to get the overlap sort of thing?
So I mean, for me, Liverpool, I don't think it's apples and apples. So I mean, Liverpool put a great emphasis on getting, width. They've got high attacking wingers and they've got attacking fullbacks, and then they try and get connections there. The midfield is pretty much there to hold the fort. Whereas we said Leipzig attack with 6, Liverpool generally attack with 5. If one of the midfielders can bomb on, that's good to support. But it's more attacking down the flanks. Whereas what Leipzig will try to do is they'll try and play through the centre. And that's why having just one player holding, or even a 4-4-2 shape out of possession, is just leaving too many holes in the middle. I just think we need to probably think about changing our shape out of possession and being more compact. If you remember last season, what the Rangers did was they absolutely congested the middle of the pitch. They put 3 centre-backs in. They had 3 defensive centre midfielders in front of them, and they just forced them wide. And they had no answer to it. They had nowhere to go. And I'm sure we won't play like that. But that's what, if you want to know one way to absolutely frustrate them, it would be that. But we're not going to play like that. So what are you going to do? We can have an academic conversation about it if you want, but it isn't going to make any difference.
Yeah. Well, it's 20-6 now. The game's at 8 o'clock, so I think we would just about be finishing up that by the time the game would be kicking off, if we did get into that. So just to round this off, then, this game is the crucial game. It sort of was from the get-go that Celtic need to make the most of their home games, especially against Leipzig and Shakhtar. The Real Madrid game was sort of a free shot in many ways. James, if you were to look at your sort of confidence barometer, where would it be at this point in time? Are you feeling more confident since we're at home, or does last week's sort of humbling take any confidence that you might have had in this game away?
Yeah, I think the loss of McGregor kind of mutes that for me, unfortunately. Had we not lost McGregor, I'd probably be reasonably confident of getting a result at least. I think the base case here is similar, because of that, is probably similar to last week, with kind of the ranges around that, which are wide. I mean, there's a lot of, in any single game. I mean, obviously, there's so much variance in what can happen just with luck. But they didn't, as we talked about, they didn't even play it, to Alan's point. Like, they created a lot of ball progression and transitions, but they weren't on their top notch playing last week either. It could have been worse had some things come off. I mean, we talked about the number of jailbreaks, that passes were just a little bit not quite weighted, with guys coming in one-on-one with Hart potentially. So, we just need a lot of that to happen. We need them to, and it's possible, to Alan's point, they are under pressure here. So maybe if they're a little tighter and that makes them from not playing great, which they were okay last week with that, a lot of this, to them actually having a bad night, which would be terrific. Because then we can really give them problems with Kyogo running in behind and that kind of stuff, and with Hatate hitting those kind of through balls, that kind of thing. I don't think that's the base case, but it's certainly not a small chance of that happening. I mean, I think there's a reasonable chance of that scenario playing out. I don't like having my hopes up too much on that kind of scenario, because I don't like getting too disappointed. So I'm trying to come in with like a flat expectation. So if it does happen, I'm thrilled and gleeful and celebrating. But that's not the base case for me anyway.
That's fair. Alan, do you want to chime in on your confidence levels?
I mean, they're not great. I think we're in a period at the moment where we seem to be floundering around trying to find consistency as a team in terms of our performance. And that's very different to where we have been over the last year, really. So I'll be very interested to see how we kind of navigate out of this. Every week seems to bring more injuries to key players. So for those reasons, and just because of, I thought although they weren't outstanding last week, I thought they looked a really good side, and they've got a clear plan, and then basically they can play the way we want to play better than we can. That's really what it comes down to in my mind. And they've got much more up top than what we have in terms of just sheer quality at this level, and therefore for those reasons I'm pretty fearful, based on the evidence of my own eyes. That's my honest assessment. But it's Champions League, it's a home game. They don't necessarily always travel well, although they only lost by 1 goal over 2 games against PSG last season. They scored 3 at Main Road, and they lost 6. They won 5-0 in Bruges. They won 3-1 in Sociedad. They won 2-0 in Atalanta. This is a really, really good side. So, for those reasons, I'm not optimistic. I'll be honest with you,
Okay.
but I'm happy to be wrong on that, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that I wanted to come out of this Champions League campaign was to stop the opposition from being happy to come to Celtic Park, and judging by Marco Rose's comments in the press conference, that has well and truly not happened. Very happy to be coming to Celtic Park tonight.
Yep.
But we'll wait and see. Predictions for the game?
I'm not giving one. This is mean. You're being mean-spirited now.
Well, you got it last year.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to create any kind of jinx.
Okay.
So I abstain humbly.
Alan, do you want to give me a prediction?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I do fear another sort of 2, not 3 goal loss. I think we're just not at it at the moment, and this is a very good side that we're up against. So, listen, I'm not going to define the season, as I say, if that does happen, but that's where my head's at, certainly.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully we are a little bit more optimistic going into the game in terms of the dressing room, and hopefully we get a result.
Absolutely.
In a couple
it better be.
A couple hours time.
If you paid me to be confident, I'd be really confident.
Yeah, I'm a classic Ireland supporter, in which that I have no confidence in the first 3 hours before the game, and then 10 minutes before the kickoff. I'm like, yeah, I think we could do it tonight, actually. So we'll wait and we'll see. Thanks to everybody who tuned in and who's still watching and leaving comments. Do keep them coming. And I just wanted to finish off the podcast today with a small word on what happened over in Chrysler, which isn't too far away from my hometown in Donegal. An absolute tragedy. 10 people lost their lives in a gas explosion, and one of them was actually a big Celtic supporter, Martin McGill. There's going to be a minute silence before the game, and the team's going to be wearing black armbands in tribute to them and to Martin as well. So may Martin and the rest of them rest in peace. And there's also a GoFundMe page which was set up for the victims and the victims' families and the community to start rebuilding. It's way past the expectations. I think it's over 200K has already been raised. I'm going to drop the link for that in the description. If anybody does want to get involved, there's absolutely no pressure, but it's a well worth the cause, and it's going to help a lot of families who are in absolute desperate need of it after a horrible couple of weeks or a couple of days. So in Chrysler in Donegal. So this podcast is dedicated to them, and hopefully they'll rest in peace, and hopefully their families can get over this tragedy very soon. We'll chat to you later, folks. Good luck.